today we're gonna go over what I did so far with the card placement and the network, and then we'll go from there and show you some of the ChatGPT and some of the scripts. Again, if there's something that you have a question about, let me know and we can figure it out. I can answer any questions that you have. Um, I'm making a build right now so we can test. Because the energy is networked, I have to test with another build. I could also use Fusion has a way of having multiple players in one session, but I have not tried it. And so I don't have experience with that. That's something that's worth looking at because it will improve the testing. But because this is such a small project, it's super fast. So I'm going to show you. Okay, so we'll start with this one. And again, I have not made the display name work or editing the deck. So I guess if we do use that, I will have to do another lesson for that. And then, so there's the deck. You see that in here I have the zones. It's still a work in progress. I have to figure out the placement. It's not the best yet. And I have in here the other one. So I should be able to scale it down now. Now I can scale it down and you can still see. So I'll join the match. See how I also added in here the timer. I need to decrease the amount of time because that's like 133 minutes. That's a long match, so we'll change it. But again, I'm not too worried. So what we have, remember, we have the shuffle button, but we don't need to. The cool thing now is that I'll show you this scales as I hover over the cards. I have 5 cards. When I grab this card, I'll be able to place it in a zone, and then it will move all the cards here and draw a card. And for now, because I have to set up the graveyard, I haven't. What happens is when the card's used, it adds it on top of the deck again. And I guess I need to add a image for the deck. And the animations are something that you can do after the fact as a polish. So for right now, I'm not too worried about it. But you'll see drag and drop, and now it's there. And we have 5 cards. And you notice that it used the energy, right? So this is 2, 4. So you'll see it drop to 6, and it'll come back up. This is 10. It won't let me use it. Like I'll see, it won't let me drag because there's not enough favor. These 6, 7, it won't let me. But it'll let me drag these and place them. Obviously, the scale is an issue. The other issue that I'll show you in a second is that they're all placed in the same area. So I have to flip, as you can tell, I need to flip the other player. So whoever's the second player needs to be on the other side and place their stuff in their zone. Because if I do this, you'll see that it'll add it, or it tried to. I don't know what it did. I added it on top of it because it doesn't know where the other one is. Because again, this is the zones are single player and the placement is in multiplayer. So once I flip it, it will work the way it needs to be. But I need to flip the camera around so that I'll show you how I plan on doing it. Is I plan on flipping. Yeah, so it's this way. So I plan on, if I flip this for the other player like this, if I do a 180, right? The idea is that I can drag this and it'll put it in here. And if you look at the other one, it's still adding it to the same problem. So I'll fix this, but that's the idea, is that these cars will line up the other way. So see how, because I flipped it, it is still doing it in the other side. So it should drag it in here. But anyway, so I'll figure that out. But for now, I can keep doing. I can keep doing this, and then the deck won't run out. So if I look at the deck, the deck is not running out of cards. So I have 11 cards in here, and if I drag and drop, you'll see it stays at 11 because it's adding the card at the bottom and putting it back on the top. And if I shuffle, it'll shuffle these again. So again, this is working as intended. It's just the placement, right? I had to do. There's a lot of stuff that I worked on and had to make sure it was working accurately. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over a few things. What I try to do is after I'm done, I try to tell ChatGPT where I'm at with the script. But let's see, we had the last thing we did with the hand script was create the fill hands and then adding cards to deck and then removing the card from the hand. So ChatGPT wanted to delete stuff here, so I let it do that. So when I drag the card from the hand and place it somewhere, instead of destroying it from the drag function on the card itself, I have the hand remove it from that list because the hand also needs to know which element was removed so that it can slide the other cards to the side. And you can do an animation, but the idea is that this would reorganize all the elements. Again, I did not write this. ChatGPT did it for me. And then this is for syncing hand transforms. Again, remember, this was the old code from a previous video about like if I wanted 6 cards in my hand. But see, let me see. I'm gonna show you because I wanted to show you kind of what I did to talk, to communicate with ChatGPT. And here you say, this is what I have for the hand so far. So because ChatGPT, two things with ChatGPT is one, sometimes it like completely forgets what you were doing and it changes your code halfway through, even though you never asked it to. And the other thing is that sometimes you do things that you didn't remind ChatGPT. So again, you haven't communicated to ChatGPT that your script changed, and so then it will throw in. If you copy paste it, you'll accidentally delete all code that you might have. So what I like to do is say, hey, this is where the script that I'm gonna ask you to modify where it's at right now. So that way there's no miscommunication. The ChatGPT has the latest, and that's that it will not mess up other than whatever's adding to the script. And then I need to add a method to adjust the cards to the empty slot because the player can grab cards at any location. So when that happens, the cards need to adjust to the empty slot. I use remove card from hand when the card is used. We can then move cards to an empty slot and draw a card. So that's, and I gave him the script as is. Okay, and it just writes for me the new, then add card, return true. And in here, see how it said reorganize hand? So what I have, I'll show you now. What was the thing? Hand. The hand. And you can also use I'm using Visual Studio, but you can use the Writer. I like Visual Studio because of these pin features. I'm so used to this that Writer doesn't have this, and it's bugging me so much. So yeah, so it's just a preference, but I know Writer has a lot of cool stuff with autocomplete and whatnot. Anyway, so in here I changed. I think I changed remove card from hands. In here, reorganize hand. At some point, I add the card again. Oh, because I have to in here, local game manager. I think in here, yeah. So we had this is attempt to draw card, a shuffle player deck. This I don't think happens anymore. So we don't use this anymore. Technically, I don't need to do with this. We don't use it anymore. So I'm gonna erase it so I don't have to. Right now we have we changed the way things worked. We have a local player controller, and this is what's gonna handle drawing the cards instead of a local game manager because this um, kind of got emptied out and wasn't very useful. And I with ChatGPT, it ended up giving a lot of responsibility to this. So we can always go back to the local manager, but I found that I didn't need this. Um, and again, this is not the best code or the most organized architecture. It's just again, this is not a final product. Is one is going to help me learn how to do card games because I never done them before. This is my first time. Um, and then is not for production, right? It's just for helping my friend and doing a trade. So again, there's no need for me to flesh out and spend hundreds of hours trying to think of the best solution for a card game. That's not going to be published. Um, we can always like again this tutorial in here. It shows like the simplicity of it and the fact that there's not much time spent in this. So there's no. It's not a big deal to delete stuff, reorganize, and refactor this. It's not going to take months to refactor. Um, Shuffle player deck. We fill the hand. So I brought in the code from this local manager into this player controller, and this is again local. And there's no network right now. This detects the input on the mouse, shuffles the deck, detect mouse input. It does the I don't know if we went over the last session, but we go over like okay, like we're gonna hover over and we're gonna detect the position of the mouse. Because again, this is not mobile. If it was mobile, we can do another part of this code that detects the touch. And then you just touch and drag and drop, and do the raycast, but from a different input, right? Hit collider. We handle the card hover over, and when we select it, we we actually go over and select the card. Let me check in here. Local player controllers. So farther down, and we don't need this anymore. Common. We check the favor cost, and then we say, okay, can this be played? So what this does is goes in here and checks the favor that you have, right? Or this gives you the favor from okay, is this favor less than the other one? So what we do in here is we grab the favor from the network manager because this is a network field. And what happens is if I didn't want to if I wanted to bypass this to test, let's say I don't want to make a build and I just want to test in the game really fast without having two players, what I can do is I can remove these and just let it select the card regardless of if it can be played or not. That way, we can test things outside Fusion. But I need to figure out and make sure everything's working right. Reset hovered. So this is when you let go, and then the scale card. All this is for the most part ChatGPT, and I just kind of make sure it's working. If it's not working, and I go in there and fix stuff. Um, this was one that was a little bit big, and I had to kind of rework. This is where we are detecting the zone, and this is a huge intersection because this is where I chose to go from local to network. This is where okay, we have to bridge the gap at some point. We can't delay it any longer and just kind of like okay. Um, so we have a player deck. Here's where we add to the bottom the card. This could be eventually this could be the graveyard if it's a special card, or like we don't need this. Eventually we wait to send cards, and the graveyard will have to be a network, so we'll have to network a bunch of IDs for the cards, and then if people want to view the graveyard, they have, when you hover over, we'll have to do a list of the strings, and so as you go through the strings, it populates the card. Or maybe what I can do, since the cards already spawn, I can just like literally move the card underneath the pile and just show it if we want. It depends on how heavy it is. I think code wise, it's better. It's easier to just literally move the card underneath, so they're all literally stacked, and I just show that array of cards that are already spawned instead of trying to do more. So another thing, but if this was a published thing, I'd probably keep the strings as an array and create a presenter class that kind of displays all the cards. Place card. We have the network game manager. So here's where, okay, we spend the favor. We tested this, so we already know this works. This will spend the favor, and then we'll place the card in the zone. And then we'll remove the card, and if it removed the card from the zone, I mean from the hand, it will draw another card. Okay, so this is where like it will do the reorganize and shuffle before it returns, right? Because it's checking, okay, is this true? It come back, there's no errors, like this thing is not empty. And then we draw a card. Good. And then the other thing, so I want to show you some of this setup. And if we go to the game, we have the zones, and what I did is one of the asks was to have a number for how many zones you want. So if the game designer wanted 4 zones, it would like automatically adjust the field. I think like trying to make the code work with that is kind of a nightmare. It's the same for this, right? If we have a number in here, we have the card slots. So that's where it places the card. So that way it's nice and even. You think about Marvel Snap has like where each card should go. And if we were to make that dynamic as well, we could do it, but again, it has to scale all the cars to fit, and it seems like a little bit tedious for what we're trying to build. And so I think it'll be just as fine if I wanted to change all the zones to be, if I go in here, if I wanted all the zones to have 5 slots or 6, right? I can, in here, I can shift it and it can have 6 slots. And I just need to make sure that these slots are filled with the right. And now if we save that, and then we have to make sure the zone here, the collider, also adjust. That's an issue as well. Then we have to shift all these up. And so all this is very tedious, but it will look better done in the prefab than to trying to dynamically do all this. Because then you have to make sure it fits, and there's an artistic touch. And then if I really wanted to do 4 zones, field layout. Okay, so this is the layout. So this is named wrong. Field, yeah, I guess field layout. Um, or whatever you want to name. So if you wanted 4, you could. I would not keep adding, right? Like, oh, why would you want to have like 20 of these? And so if you're gonna change the layout of the field, you need to adjust the art. And I don't think that's valuable to have in code, if that makes sense. So I didn't think it was worth the time it would take to figure out all the little details that it would take to make these modular pieces, which is the field, how many fields you can place in a game, and how many cards per zone in layout, because I think that's kind of too much of a scope. The hard part will be if a zone effect or a field effect is that you can only place one card. I think that's doable. What you can't do is make an effect that will let you add more, because then we have to change it dynamically and it won't look pretty. And that's the other thing. So you sacrifice the look for efficiency. So let me show. So we have this layout. So what happens is, and this is something that I do need to change right now in this local field. The local player, non-network. We have in here, we have all the zones. I'll move my thing. So we have all the zones in here. And let's see, these zones are the thing that it checks. So it checks if the car, when you're hovering over, if it's within any of these zones. What we have to do is, I'll show you, because we talked about the script. I'll show you in the code. In here, it checks if the bound contains that. And so it goes through each one. What we need to do is just do a raycast like we do with other stuff and detect the zone. And if it's a zone, place it. So that's something that I'm gonna have to change. Also, again, once I flip it, it'll work better. So that should work. Let me see. So it's spent favors, all this stuff. And then the last thing I think I want to show you is we went over the hand. We went over the fields, the zones. If you have questions, let me know. Right now, like I said, the zones are local, and the game manager again is the main guy that's gonna do the favor. And then 8,000 is too much, so I'm gonna do 800 seconds. That should work a lot better. Okay. And I'm gonna change filling stuff. Change that back here. Okay. So let's go over the hand. So we had P card, and then we have network card. So, and I'm gonna show you, because one of the things was that we wanted to keep the cards pretty similar. It's just that one is networked. I took out the colliders because we don't need it. We're not dragging. We're spawning it. The one thing I'm gonna have to do is create a raycast time to grab it. What I'm gonna have to do is create something for the network one so that it knows it's a network card and figure out how to utilize that. But the code can be in there, right? Because let me show you the difference. So I have network card, and for the most part, this is identical. So if you have, where's the other card presenter? So we have card presenter, yeah, and we have network card. Okay, so the card presenter is just filler, right? And the network card is the same, but it just has this card ID that's networked. And the reason I do that is just in case we need, because we're gonna need it. It's so that we can replicate. So instead of having all these values networked, I just networked the string, and then I use the database to grab the information. Okay, and then we can set it once, and we're done. You could do on ID changed. I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay, I took it out. So more. But if you wanted to, you could do an on change render. Anytime this value changes, it will do whatever that function is. So that's a nice one to have. But the reason I don't need it is because I do this before the card is spawned. So when I set up the card, that network function that we talked about, we go back. Come on. Oh, it's up here. So we have this RPC. So what happens is place card in zone, right? We have that. So this guy, the zone says, okay, place the card in the zone. If we have the game manager, we'll do an RPC call. We give it the card ID and we give it the position. So in there, we say, okay, this is the card ID. We save it, we store it, and then we spawn. And then there's this respawn location, so we can add. Oh, in here, there's a on before spawned. So we can. This happens before the class is spawned. So what we do is we update the card ID before everything spawns. So when it spawns, it knows. So regardless of if you have state authority or not, it'll fill this for both the owner and the client. So it's a nice little thing to do, and you don't have to worry about it after. And that's it. Okay, so it seems pretty straightforward, but I had to do a lot of back and forth to figure out the structure because I wasn't sure. Like you saw, I had this local game manager and I had the network manager kind of as a, I like to have parallel. So I know, okay, this one is like local, this one is networked. Like the card net is local, and then there's a network version of it. But in this scenario, so far it hasn't made sense. So I removed it and now I use the local player controls. Maybe I'll use a singleton version of the game manager to know if, but I don't think I'll need it. So in the next task that I'm gonna work on is the winning condition, because now we have enough. What we gotta set up is there's nothing here, right? We have the P. I laid out P underscore field layout. I need to set up this prefab and the percenter, the script that goes in here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start, each zone is gonna have a timer. And so just like we did the timer with the energy bar, we're gonna do a timer for each zone. So every time, because we're gonna have to spawn these again. So first task is to get this working with a raycast, right? We want the player to be able to drag and drop. The other thing we need to work on is player 1 and player 2, make sure they're facing each other and that the cards are spawning correctly. Okay. Once we have that and the zone's working with the raycast, so we're not hard coding it, we can get rid of these and have the manager spawn them as a network object. Because again, this field layout is networked, but these zones are not gonna be networked, so they don't require. So I'll have to play with that because there might be some issues on the parenting side. Because if the parent is networked, the children are usually networked. But there's some features because the class is not, I can access it. And as long as I don't mess with the two, like the relationship between the two, I should be fine. But we'll test it out together. And then so in the next video, we'll have these zones spawn and they'll have a timer and they'll have points. So as you place cards, that zone will tell the field, or I'll change it to zone maybe instead of, to field instead of zones. But the idea is that the zone will tell the field, hey, I have a card here. This is again, we have the ID, so we can use that to gather the information and say, hey, this card has this much power. So add the powers together. So each field will know the power on each side. And then there'll be a timer. And when the timer reaches 0, again, let me see if I have the card. Have this layout, right? So these zones will have powers and a timer. So the timer will go, and when it reaches 0, it'll grant a point, a score, to the player with the most points. And so I'll do that, and maybe I'll start adding display names. I don't know. I'll just do player 1 and player 2. That way I don't go crazy, and I can make sure that things are working the way I want it to. The timer, less. Anyway, so once we have that, we have most of the game, right? We have the winning condition. So we have to figure out what happens after. And and then once this zone is over, it'll destroy the cards and it will spawn another zone with another timer. So all three might have different time, or I'll have to talk to um, my friend to figure out the specifics. But now I'll probably, one of the next things I need from him is like the effects, because once I have the field working, that'll be the next video. The field and making all this network, it's coming together, and then after that, the next in the future is to add the effects to these cars and then start doing things. That's where it's gonna get real ugly, and we'll have to figure things out depending on what the effects are. Because oh my gosh, when the effects come, that's where the asks are gonna get pretty big, and we'll have to figure out how to compromise, how we can get things done. And that's where the fun starts. And after that, I need to figure out the scaling, right? Because in these pictures that you see here, when you're in the mobile, you can see the cards. You don't have to hint, like these numbers are huge. And if you saw on this game, the cards are so tiny, I can't even see them. Although, like, yeah, my screen is super small in here. So I'll have to see how it looks, but we have to make sure the scaling works correctly. Because right now I just placed everything. This is developer art. It sucks. Um, I can remove the shuffle button and start cleaning up things as I go. Again, things are coming together. If you have any questions, let me know if I missed something that you want to talk about. But I'm hoping I'm showing you the code because I mean it's just ChatGPT. I have it's all like I did not write. I probably wrote like 10% so far of the code. 90% was ChatGPT. So I want to show you that you don't need to you don't need to know code. You do need, I mean, the experience helps rein in what you ask ChatGPT and how to ask it. Because I could have written it, but I suck at typing. ChatGPT could type faster, and I don't have to think about it. I can keep doing the game design stuff. But the main thing is that we can get this done, and this game is like a popular game. So if you have a specific game that you want me to bust out and do, we can do Brawl Stars, Clash Royale, Clash of Clans. We're already doing kind of Clash Royale by doing the timer. But if you want to do any popular game that you like that you've seen, we can figure it out, and it won't look as good. But the whole point of this is to make games and to finish them, to be efficient, and that an engine and ChatGPT, you can get a lot done. You don't need much. That's why I want to share this, because um, a lot of information out there is not about finishing games. I want this channel to be purely about helping you finish your games. If you have questions, let me know. See you in the next video.